people are really out there claiming to be Jesus. It has happened even in the time of Jesus himself, and now it still happens. There are people who will come out one day. It depends on what the faith presents. That's what I think. It depends on the faith presents. There's always some people who are imaginative, and they really want to make these things real, so they make money out of it. Or they enjoy the idea of keeping people into that state of delusion. What's it, delusion? Deceiving the people all the time to sort of give them false hope, because they feel that encourages them to sort of. And as I said before, giving somebody false hope, you are really harming that person's life. If you come out honestly to let the person know how honest you are, that so-called counseling you gave, it may be false, but it was only to encourage him for some reason. But they are not, it's like that person, that comedian out there who has declared himself that I'm doing comedy to cheer you up. That is better. You laugh, you know that it's just comedy. But these false hopes are serious, because it is never admitted as false. It is admitted as true, as real, as something which is meant to be. And you, at the end of your life, maybe your deathbed, you realize the truth, and then there you are caught in between. They shouldn't give the liberty to any witchcraft or any wizard or any magical things or any evil thing to take place. It doesn't give room for that. At the end of the day, the truth has been mentioned. It is revealed. But this does not give room for anything else outside of that. In fact, it actually brings the awareness of man and to accept the reality of life, what it is, and reject it as he so fit, as he sees fit. If you been experiencing something spiritual, you think it is God, everything is God, then deceptively, that is rather harming you. It may be witchy thing, it may be wizard thing, it may be magical thing happening to you, and you are thinking it's God. You haven't seen him before. You never can recognize him. Neither do you know what he looked like or how he looked like. How can you just jump to conclusion by some science and this thing? When we say spirit or witchcraft and all that, they are all the same thing. They are all spiritual activities, and they all have the same similarity functions. Like human beings, the race of human beings is the same thing. The characters of human beings are the same. So if you see some characteristics of another person, that is what makes you conclude that he's a human being. You see, so if spirit come in, but that human being may not necessarily be the human being you are looking for. If there are other spirits there, and you go through a spiritual experience, you cannot just conclude or jump into conclusions and say that it is God. That's a very stupid thing to do. To my view, it is very stupid. It's a silly thing to do. It's a childish thing. Because spirits are many there. So that experience should not give you the right to mislead yourself or anybody saying that this is God. What makes it God? What right do you make you think that it is God? You have to have the knowledge that there is a God. Know there is a God. That is how far you can go. And the next step is believing there is a God. So you believe, and then you know there is a God. That's all. But as to say that I have identified God, or I can certainly claim that this is God, that is a serious thing. You have to be ready to prove what you're saying. But if you know God, you are characterizing him in a certain sense, and you know him, and you keep it that way. That is personally between you and yourself. But even that, what you know is a definition you have given to him. It's just a definition. It is not something that can be attributed to his personality as a person that you sort of can point him out. In any way, you can only define him, and based on that definition, is a strategy that you seek him, that he may one day respond to the character or the definition that you've given him, and that even in your life and in any expectation that you may have. But if that does not happen, or that hasn't happened, you stay on the level of the definition that you know, and that definition may even be wrong. It may be so wrong. It may be so wrong. So let us be careful. And if I continue with the reading of 1 Samuel 4, It says, and Eli had to die from there. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, due to be delivered, and when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and gave birth. She what? She bowed. Is it bowed or bowed? She bowed herself and gave birth. For her labor pains came upon her, and about the time of her death, the women who stood by had stood by her said to her, "Do not fear, for you have borne a son." But she did not answer, nor did she regard it. Then she named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband." And she said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured." This is something that we have to, take into consideration. I chipped in a few, thoughts of mine to sort of make a point. But we keep focusing on the idea of how these two books somehow contradict each other. And I was pointing about fights and advices that we get from God, and how we view these advices, what we think of it. If you go through the Gospels and all that, it tells you in some point where after Jesus has, he sort of advised his disciples and said, but if I'm not with you, you have to take up your arm, take up everything that you have and to defend yourself. There was that advice telling his disciples to sort of, doing the right thing when it comes to it, but not when he was with them. It points out something to tell you that they were being encouraged to go along certain line. Whether it was just a phrase to make them conscious of something, I can't really tell. It says, I sent you out there with I'll get it out for you to sort of compare yourself and make sense out of it says, send them a savior before I send you out. Because when we sort of talk about God, most of the time we have the way of thinking in our head that things should be, how we expect things to be. But we don't really sit down to really consider the options that is on our lap. What is really meant for us to consider. If you read Matthew 10, verse 16, it says, "Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves." Okay? Who are the wolves? This is a suggestion he's trying to put here. Give your attention to something. I'm sending you out as sheep, as wolves. You are sheep. Now we know what sheep are. Sheep are people who are harmless creature in certain ways. The sheep cannot use his teeth to even bite anybody. They use it to chew grass. And they don't have claws to sort of scratch you or that kind of